it's hard to believe it's 6 years ago since that fateful day when so many lives were affected. I remember touring the devastation in so many parts of our state and seeing homes destroyed and lives wrecked. I remember more than the physical destruction, the human toll that was taking place. But I remember looking into the eyes of so many of you, not all of you, but several of you who I met at that time. And in one respect, there was the fear of what had happened and what would come. And the other side of it was an incredible resilience. I saw some of the best of what we are as a state in the midst of the worst natural disaster in the state's history. So I've never forgotten those moments. When some people came for the photo op and then left, I never did. When flood insurance premiums were set to skyrocket, and George and others were a big part of that at the time, just months after Sandy, I went to work in a bipartisan effort and passed a bill that stopped the rate hikes and saved about $50 million to New Jersey ratepayers who would have been hit enormously in new premiums. When you came to me with horror stories about being lowballed by your insurance companies, and heard about being paid pennies on the dollar, I led a Senate investigation and uncovered systemic violations of what was going on in terms of change engineering reports and basically reopened the claims of so many people who were told no and got nearly $300 million back into people's pockets to get back into their homes and back into their businesses. When FEMA threatened to close out the increased cost of compliance with the ICC program before Sandy survivors could ultimately access it, I pushed for an extension and got us an additional 4 years so that we could get access to it. And now that we have a productive partner with Governor Murphy, where we're going to have an announcement a little while later, where we're reprogramming some federal Sandy dollars so people can still, who still challenged, about 1,200 families in the state who are still challenged, will have an opportunity to hopefully finally get back in their home. I'm proud to see what we've been able to do. But this is never over. And that's why Pallone has perfect timing. It's never over, and he's going to come and make sure that we help get this all, get the final phase. We just started. No, not at all. We just started because we know we're a little up against the time. We need to finish the job, in a sense. And that's why I just wanted to call all of your attention to our SAFE NFIP Act, the legislation that I've written and has bipartisan support. We have several Republican colleagues on it, a bunch of Democrats. It's the most comprehensive bill written to deal with the flood insurance reauthorization that is due. We already kicked the ball down the court a bit. November 30th is the next deadline for the National Flood Insurance Program. We just extended it by virtue of taking the program as it is without any changes and extending its life, but it finishes on November 30th. And what we want to do is not just extend that what is, we want to learn from all the lessons of Sandy at the end of the day. So just to go through some of that, and it's a bill that I believe that we drafted, and I say we, Frank has certainly worked with me, but so many of you have been part of giving us the inputs about not only what you experienced, but some of the challenges that we still have. So I appreciate all of you and all of you as an organization as well in giving us insights. Just to tick off a few of what we learned, it eliminates the Earth movement exclusion that was constantly used as a reason to deny people. It eases proof of loss requirements. It requires engineers' reports to be produced by, you guessed it, certified engineers. It holds insurance companies accountable if they lowball policyholders. It allows homeowners to recover attorney fees if they have to sue. And it reforms the appeal process with real deadlines for FEMA. So that's, I think, a thumbnail sketch of it, but it does a lot more than that. But it takes all of the lessons that we learned of the consequences of Sandy and incorporates it. And to get several Republicans, my two colleagues from two Republican senators from Louisiana, Marco Rubio and others, to join us, I think is a pretty strong statement of understanding this is the best bill. Now, it could be the best bill, but it doesn't pass unless we can get 60 votes in the United States Senate. So we need to speak up with all of those who we are associated with, not just in the state but across the country, in order to do that, so that we can ultimately get to where we need to be. So let me turn to Frank for a few comments, and then I know I want to open it up to hear all of you.
I know he's not going to want me to say it, but I do want to say that obviously all of you who have been leaders on this issue and Senator Menendez have really, taken charge of this and incorporated what you've all been saying. I mean, I have to say, look, during Sandy, because this is the anniversary today, you were out front every day. You were here every day in the Bayshore. You were constantly trying to find out what needed to be done to help individuals on a constituent level, on a legislative level. So I do want to thank you for that, because I don't care what anybody says, and some say, well, you're just saying that now, but I'm not. I never saw anybody as an elected official that was more involved in trying to help people and trying to figure out practically what needed to be done in the future than you, Bob. So I have to start with that. And I think that's the hallmark of this legislation that Senator Menendez put together, that it actually takes the input from everybody here in a practical sense to put something together that actually will be meaningful with regard to the flood insurance program. The problem is, and I'll only speak from the House side, is that, we're still not to the point where we can get a majority, Democrat or Republican, to move ahead with this. Those who are in charge, and I'm going to try not to be partisan, are saying that they want to do these short-term renewals of the flood insurance program without making any changes, and there's some on the right who want to actually privatize it, and which I don't understand how that makes any sense, because if it had worked in the private sector, then we wouldn't have needed the federal program to begin with. The very fact that we have a federal program is because you can't have an effective private flood insurance program unless you cherry pick and just take the easy ones, the cherries, I guess, right? So we're not there in the House. I mean, we're going to go back after the election, and it's still a push to try to convince certainly the Republican majority, maybe they won't be anymore, but even some of the Democrats, to say that this is something that we need to do, that we need to look at this program again kind of from the start and say, these are the changes that need to be made. It's much easier to just kick the can down the road and reauthorize it for another 6 months or another year, which is what I'm afraid may happen. So we're not there, but we're going to keep pushing. And if anything, Bob, it shows me that you really took this practically speaking. It wasn't ideological. It was just practically speaking what needs to be done. But a lot of times, convincing your colleagues to do what's practical is not always easy, because a lot of them are into the ideology. Certain people just think everything should be privatized, and that's an ideological point of view that doesn't work.